Webinars and podcasts are online seminars for educational purposes. They can be paid for or free, depending on the maker. As of today, webinars and podcasts are being used mainly for furthering education in areas such as law and global nonprofits. Webinars can cover a large range of topics, and many corporations are using these to educate professionals in their area of study. This type of learning fits into the category of sensory input, where large amounts of information is absorbed through the acts of listening, seeing, and other senses. There are also two other types of learning that may be more important than sensory input: trial and error, and getting help from an experienced peer. We believe as webinars and podcasts by themselves, they can function as great supplemental tools, but cannot replace formal education.
Many webinars are free and can be accessed at any time by a potential learner. Websites such as Charity How To provide an organized list of webinars that are available for people who are trying to learn specific skills to further the success of their nonprofit organizations. These resources are all free and are all labeled with their duration and level of expertise. Free webinars provide education to individuals and organizations that may otherwise not be able to afford access to such information. Many webinars are convenient because they can be accessed on demand. For those lessons that are live, as in not on demand, transcripts can usually be found for those who miss the seminar. Although webinars can be accessed anywhere, they are not in person, which can be a downfall to anyone with questions. One of the most innovative uses of webinars is to create a personalized, cost-effective curriculum that can be used for an individual's personal goals or for the skill development of an entire group. For example, if the manager of a nonprofit organization thought their employees lacked the proper skills to write effective grant applications, they could build a curriculum of several different free or paid webinars that would teach the employees this crucial skill. On another tack, an individual who may not be able to afford a formal college education would find webinars extremely valuable because they provide a way for them to educate themselves. Because being understaffed is a major issue today with global nonprofits, as well as NGOs/IGOs, webinars and podcasts allow for on-the-job training. Webinars are allowing the job market to increase as they allow people besides graduates of college to apply for positions. However, it must be addressed that a formal education may often be valued higher by employers than an education that was subjectively put together by an individual rather than an institution. We will discuss this issue later in the podcast. Webinars also face the challenge of reliability. In a traditional formal educational setting, it is assumed that professors are qualified to teach and lecture. Professors are usually involved in some kind of research in their field and always have degrees from other formal institutions of education, which gives them credibility. We assume that we can rely on them. However, when it comes to an online webinar, the lines between who is a reliable teacher and who is not may be blurred, and it may not be clear to the learner until they have already watched the webinar, which may be costly if the webinar is paid. Many webinars are taught by qualified professionals who have degrees in their field and experience through research and employment, but not all webinar sites include the information of who is teaching. This can be an issue when an individual or group is attempting to use this technology as an informal tool for developing crucial skills.
Webinars and podcasts, as stated earlier, fall into the learning category of sensory input. This can be described as the metaphor of the learner being a sponge and the information being water. The new information can be absorbed through sensory functions such as hearing, seeing, touching, etc. Webinars and podcasts are strictly hearing. Some images and videos could be used in the webinar depending on the material. So, most of the information can only be obtained through this medium. This is a great way to learn if you are an auditory learner and have free time to spend online learning about your interests. It is also very helpful because you choose a webinar that is made by someone who is very reliable. Then you are essentially getting help from someone who is already an expert in their field. But a huge downfall for webinars and podcasts is they only allow for this one type of learning blended with some form of help from an experienced peer. There is no way to ask a webinar or podcast a question. You can't really interact with it. There's no way for trial and error to happen in this type of learning. So minus the sensory input and getting some knowledge just spoken to you from an expert or experienced peer, a webinar session or podcast recording can't really substitute for formal education. There's no interaction that is critical for developing higher thinking in the area of study. There are no exercises that will be graded to make you think critically. Along with there being no interaction like there would be in a more formal setting of a classroom, there is also no way to standardize this type of learning. In a formal classroom, you can take tests, answering questions, and being graded upon the work you do. As podcasts and webinars are now, there is no way for a human resources worker to hire a new employee to compare someone who has only been taught through webinars with a person with a credential from a top school. There is proof of mastery in a degree, but there's no proof of mastery just by watching some videos. This kind of learning could be beneficial for those who do not like structured learning. It could also help a lot of people focus on their interests instead of getting a liberal arts degree and having a third of their credit hours not count towards their major they actually want to study and practice after college.
We believe that webinars and podcasts could be more useful, beneficial, and universal if they just had some add-ons. Combining the doing of a formal education with all of the pros of webinars and podcasts can make a substantially better education system. This hybrid would take more of what a person wants to do and give them an easy, free, all-access pass to the education, while still standardizing the way people accomplish mastering the knowledge that is needed to enter the job market. When individuals and groups are able to construct a personalized curriculum and pair it with legitimate and accomplished work in the subject, their skills will be on par with those earned in a formal education, or better. Education is starting to be revolutionized globally, but there is still a lot of work to be done. Maybe a step towards hybrid systems such as these can accomplish what formal education cannot.